There has been a subterfuge. People all the way to the top of the system are not aware of it.
I don't know one stockholder that knows when they signed whatever paperwork they signed to purchase stock that those assets were going to be used for a loan someplace upline.
Now, you have to understand this is being done on an enormous scale. The collateral is being used many times over. Look at the code itself, and it's just so simple, so straightforward. The deception.
This issue is a state's issue anyway. The federal legislators can do nothing about this issue. You have to become that citizen who's going to stand up.
Instead of the big bank being the first one to get the money on a failure, we inverted that in the bill and said, no, the property owner is the first in line to get their money.
The banking lobby is coming down pretty hard on preventing the hearing of this bill.
Changing these rules would impel commercial parties to cease doing business in Tennessee or with Tennessee residents. That is in no one's interest.
You think people understand that they were being threatened?
I think everybody in the room understood that. Yeah.
DTC, which is the sort of centralized clearing agency, why would it want to do business with a intermediary in Tennessee that does business with Tennessee customers? Because now the whole structure of the system doesn't work right to protect DTC. If you want to change it, I would invite you to work with the Uniform Law Commission.
I trust the members that were elected by their folks back home to come here and make these type of decisions.
By doing what you're doing, they are demonstrating that they are corrupt.
I'm James Patrick, the director of the following film. I began this film after meeting David Webb, who is a high-level finance guy, worked for the likes of Warburg and Pincus, and later ran his own hedge fund. In the summer of 2023, he released a book called The Great Taking that documents probably the greatest financial fraud story of mankind, the encumbrance of all securities worldwide without anyone being the wiser. As an investigator, this got my attention.
So I've written this book, The Great Taking, to put on the table a very sophisticated structure designed to take essentially all financial collateral globally. The mechanisms are in place for that to happen. This is how it works with respect to literally all financial instruments globally now. In the event of insolvency, your financial assets that you believe you owned can be taken by certain secured creditors in the event of insolvency. And this is the shocker, not your insolvency, but insolvency of the people that secretly used your securities as collateral.
Property rights to all financial securities have been subverted. The biggest banks in the world have been secretly using everyone's stocks and bonds as collateral for their own gain for the last 40 years.
There's an intelligent design behind it. It has been planned and put in place over more than 50 years. This began in the late 1960s with movement to dematerialize securities.
Dematerialization, or DMAT, is the process of moving from physical certificates to electronic bookkeeping.
It used to be that securities, stocks, and bonds, you had a paper certificate for that. Through dematerialization, you have a book entry ownership, which in and of itself did not sever your property rights. You had to have the pool nature so that there were no actual certificates and specific identification of an owner to a specific securities.
In 1973, the Deposit Trust Corporation was formed to house all financial securities in a pooled, fungible, and aggregate form. Once securities were held centrally with no individual security connected to any individual client, the biggest banks began to freely use all securities as collateral on their own derivatives contracts many times over.
What is collateral in the derivatives market? Think about how a secured loan works. A person takes out a loan to buy a new car, and puts up the car as collateral. If she can't repay the loan, then the lender uses the car to offset its loss. Assets are put up to protect each counterparty from loss. In derivatives, the market value of the trade can vary from day to day. Financial institutions are also required to post a pot of collateral before they trade with each other. This is called initial margin, and it's a kind of buffer that insulates the surviving party against further losses following a default.
In the event the derivatives market collapses, there will be automated collateral calls that will sweep up everyone's securities. This is what is referred to as the Great Taking. To learn more about this, subscribe to the Great Taking Report.
The beginnings of this was with changing the Uniform Commercial Code in the United States. And it was specifically Article 8 and 9 of the UCC, creating a new legal concept of a security entitlement that replaced property rights to securities.
States changed Article 8 of the Uniform Commercial Code, a state law passed in all 50 states, so the investment intermediaries, they own the actual stock, and they're holding it on behalf of you. You, the purchaser, don't actually own your investments.
With the 1994 Article 8 revision, they conjured a new type of property ownership or property right called a securities entitlement. The drafting committee defines a securities entitlement as a bundle of personal rights you hold against your broker. So if I hold rights against someone else, that's a contract. So it isn't a security in the sense that you thought you used to own something on paper. It's a contract.
The 1994 Article 8 revision of the Uniform Commercial Code substituted direct ownership of securities with contractual claims on securities, called securities entitlements. The significance of that is that in the event of a bankruptcy of the financial intermediary upline in the system, above your broker and custodian, your claim to your own securities would come last, and you would likely be left empty-handed.
If your account provider, your broker or your custodian became insolvent, you could take immediate return of your securities. That is no longer the case.
With the current laws in place, it could mean that American families will end up getting crushed, all to protect the big banks and the billion-dollar institutions.
The 1987 Black Monday financial crisis was used to justify the Armageddon planning, as James Rogers terms it in Policy Perspectives, the document from '96, which puts the lie to the idea that this was about some kind of efficiency and modernization and convenience. They knew that they were doing this in order to sweep all of the assets to the biggest banks in a major collapse.
David Webb exposed this issue in detail in his book. This film documents the first legislative season where bills were introduced to amend Article 8 of the UCC on the state level around the United States. The film introduces this important issue to the public so that you can continue the fight to restore your rights to your own stocks and bonds.
If the financial system ever crashes again, tens of millions of Americans could be at risk of losing all of their investments, including what's in their 401 or IRA accounts.
Focus is a superpower. I chose to focus on this issue about taking all property globally because it has this power of uniting. We can overcome divide and rule. A miracle happened, and that's these people right here. These actions in the states began without my knowing anything about it. I didn't start it.
I learned of David's book in December 15th, 2023. I read a Zero Hedge article. So I read the article, watched the documentary, downloaded the PDF, ordered the hard copy book, and read it all, and thought you were nuts. Thought you were absolutely nuts. There's no way this could happen. So spent the next 2 weeks running down every source in your paper, in your book, and digging up some of my own. And by New Year's of 2023, I said, we got to do something here. And went to Betty and Audrey at Pro Family and said, I know this is not really in your wheelhouse, but this is still a family issue. We should look at this. And we talked it through, and they said, let's go for it. And then they put that coalition letter together, which kicked the whole thing off.
Yes.
All that time, I knew where we wanted to start was Julie and Bud. Even though I said that we're outnumbered, I like our odds. The truth is on our side. We've got good people on our side. We're motivated by the right things. The other side is motivated by greed.
The shocking thing about this, the really miraculous thing, is how quickly this moved from people really becoming aware of it just in December of 23 to have a bill brought in February.
The first state is now fighting back on this, and it's South Dakota. Monday, South Dakota lawmakers introduced a House Bill 1199. This will rewrite the commercial code in South Dakota so that you get to keep ownership of what you own in investments. That is yours. Now, the bank lobbyists are hating this. Financial institutions are hating this. If the bill passes in South Dakota, it will be the first step towards fixing this broken system in all 50 states, but it must be addressed. It must be addressed.
The first state to introduce a bill to revise UCC Article 8 and restore property rights to securities was presented by Julie Auck in South Dakota. We traveled to South Dakota to meet Julie.
When you are trying to steal someone that I care about, and I care about the people of South Dakota's money, their 401ks, their IRAs, the things that they have worked their entire lives for, and they're just going to take it, I'm not on my watch. I'm going to do everything in my power, everything. And I don't care what they call me. I don't care how much they ridicule me. I don't care what it takes. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we chip away at their dishonesty, because the truth always comes out. As long as you present the facts and you keep saying, why won't you make these changes? Why won't you make these changes if there really is nothing to this? So we just have to continually present the truth.
So we have been trying to get to Pierre, South Dakota for a couple of days now. There's some questionable weather in South Dakota, but it's important that we get there. A bill has been introduced in the legislature that would restore property protections to the ownership of securities in the state of South Dakota. This would be the first place really in the world where there has been pushback on this. So it's very important that people focus on this now and support this action.
Okay, so we're here in South Dakota. We're here in Pierre.
I got emails from people involved with the Heartland Institute and this pro-family legislative network, and these people took it upon themselves to just begin the process. I will be testifying for the legislature, and there's a group of people here that have done all the work, and I will be supporting them with everything I can do.
So how many do you think are excited about it?
It's a growing number. Today the meetings were with two of the representatives that are on the committee we're in front of. Hard to read. They seem to track, what we're talking about. We're just trying to get it so that they're not drinking out of a fire hose right away on Wednesday morning, Yes.
Representative Peterson, hey. David Webb. Hi, good to meet you.
Very nice
Welcome.
To meet you.
Thanks for coming to South Dakota.
Thank you.
Good to have you. We're this way. Hi.
Hi,
nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
I'm a second-year legislator. I have absolutely no political experience. So when David said that anyone can do this, you really just need to have a heart for the people of your community and the heart for the people of your state. And there are legislators in your state in your state that care.
I'm South Dakotan, and I came to here to just change,
Yes.
to bring a conservative voice, to bring a voice for the people.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what the UCC was.
Yeah, well, most people don't. Even lawyers say, well, they don't know anything about that.
It's written to the place that is so difficult to understand.
Yes, on purpose.
And they do that. And they do that on purpose.
It is so convoluted. The average lawyer probably can't understand it, but I'm telling you, the average representative or senator doesn't have a clue what it says.
The bank lobby is powerful because they make contributions, and
Yes.
But the Uniform Law Commission has developed this reputation over the years of being, this bipartisan, it's all just well-meaning attorneys, which I don't even know if those words go together very often, but they're just doing it for the public good, when they're drafting these uniform laws, and that process has been corrupted and taken over since at least the early 80s. So when you look at something like UCC Article 8 or the Article 9 and 12 issues we were dealing with, the Uniform Law Commission still comes in with a certain level of authority, and lawmakers are busy. You've got 1,000 bills, a lot of stuff to read. You have to trust your experts, right? So we keep bumping into that fact in both of your states, where when the Uniform Law Commission comes in, they bring in the big dogs. Legislators listen, to that. And who are David and I against, this Uniform Law Commission that's been around since 1895.
The UCC has facilitated commerce for over 100 years and is widely respected. But questionable amendments to the UCC have been made, and legislators are taking notice. For the first time, the Uniform Law Commission is being viewed with suspicion, as they are forwarding amendments to the UCC that undermine property rights, facilitate central bank digital currencies, as well as tokenization of real-world assets.
It is definitely more complicated than it needs to be, and I think that's done on purpose because they want to give this, they want people to basically be frustrated and say, I can't deal with this. I've got this other bill, I'm testifying in an hour. The experts are here. I'll have to believe what they say. This is really simple. We try to keep it real simple. It doesn't have to get into the weeds, but they want to get into the weeds because that's where they live, right? And if they can get into the weeds and get you guys to say, what the heck's going on, then they win.
It has global significance because it makes it real for people. So regardless of what happens here, it's very significant to have a bill, something concrete like that.
Just reading that first UCC bill that came across the floor last year, I just said, this is full of some very bad language. When you have programmable, controllable ledgers, you have, electronic money that's controllable. I mean, those words are not democratic words. Didn't know what it was, and Representative Scott Odenbach and John Hanson, I looked 4 pages into the bill, and it was 124 pages, and I said, this looks like CBDC, central bank digital currency. This does not look good because it was electronic money, and that's what got me reading it.
Yeah.
And it passed on the floor. 17 of us had objected to it. Then the next day it went to the Senate floor. It passed the Senate floor. I had not given up, but another representative, Marty Overweg, came up to me and he goes, Julie, you could always ask the governor to veto it. And I said, we can do that? And he said, yes. And so then that was my next mission. So for the next 10 days, he'd send her an email, I'd send her an email every day.
Office, the phone lines and the emails are getting pounded.
She one of her staff sent me an email and said, Julie, we're getting 1,200 calls. 1,200. So people were fervently after it. The week that we ended session came and she said, if you can get me 37 signatures, I said, I'll get you 40 by noon.
Yes.
So that's what we did. So she vetoed it for us.
Yeah.
So then it got everybody, it really did bring awareness to it.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's a similar issue, it's right in your wheelhouse. You'd already gotten the credibility from the 2023 UCC fight, had the scars to show for it. But I knew that this was right in your wheelhouse because you're an investment advisor, directly, more so than last year's. This one directly relates to you.
Correct.
So then that's when we put the simple legislation together because we were behind the 8 ball. This is January 1st. Sessions are getting started. You've got bill deadlines, submission dates coming up. You only have certain limits on what you can do. So we put a very simple bill together, put it in your guys' hands, and it took off.
In South Dakota, call your lawmakers. House Bill 1199. Check that bill out. Give it to your own lawmakers in your own state. We've got to protect your investments.
The EU is completely unaccountable, and the nation states feel they have to just go along with the EU directives. The structure of the U.S. with the states, this is the hope we have. This is what we have to use. That, it's going to be very difficult to do anything at the federal level. The change has to begin at the state level.
The people in South Dakota, we are in tune to what's happening, I truly do believe. And we're a conservative state. But unfortunately, here in Pierre, there is way too much influence from the big corporations, from the larger businesses, and we are really, I hate to use the word under attack, but it almost feels that way. And not having any experience whatsoever in politics,
That's probably good that you're not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the bill in South Dakota was quickly defeated with a strong show of force by the banking lobby. They called out the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, the Uniform Law Commission, the South Dakota Bankers Association, and the South Dakota Retailers Association. It was clear from their testimonies that few of them understood what they were opposing. But Representative Julie Auck is undeterred and introducing the bill again this year in 2025.
It's very important for legislators to understand when they think that their local state financial service entities are aligned with the banking powers, nothing could be further from the truth, because those are the lowest tier intermediaries that will have all the liability when this happens, and the highest tier will take the property and will be insulated. The banking interests want people in the financial services industry to believe that they're all in the same boat, on the same side in this. That is a misdirection. The model for this, by analogy with medieval fortress towns, there was a castle. The castle keep was on a hill. There was an ample city wall around the town. The townspeople were encouraged to settle within those walls, and they felt they were being protected by the Lord in the castle. When the real strategy behind that was that any attackers would have to go through the townspeople before getting to the Lord in the castle. That is the financial services industry. The castle on the keep is the biggest banks. That is J.P. Morgan. The simple townsfolk are the people in the financial services industry that have the responsibility to their clients. And what they've done with this construct is the claims from the clients are against their financial services providers. For example, in the state of Oklahoma, who don't actually have the client assets. The client assets are elsewhere. So we have to understand together that the people in the financial services industry are not being protected by this construct either. And by making it apparent and all talking about it, we can face up to it.
The Uniform Commercial Code in the United States and the Central Securities Depository Regulations in the EU stipulate that no legal claim can pass the level of our broker. No legal claims are allowed to penetrate up to the Central Securities Depositories, where all securities are held in pooled form. The rationale given for this is that it would cause too much of a mess because these securities are already encumbered upwards of 20 times in this upside-down pyramid of derivatives contracts. The second state to introduce a bill to restore property rights to securities was Tennessee, with Representative Bud Halsey leading the way. David and I traveled to Tennessee. You're a former cop and now a state legislator?
36 years in the police department, yeah.
What was the name of this bill that was put forth and how you first heard about the subject?
Well, it's just a bill. It was a UCC bill to deal with protection of people's assets.
And how long ago have you heard about that issue?
Actually, when Mr. Webb came out with his book and people began to read it, then constituents started calling me and saying, what are you going to do about it? And I didn't realize this and I didn't realize that, and I can lose everything that I own. I got a hold of the Grandies out in North Dakota. I said, you know, is your group doing anything? Are they helping states? Are they working on legislation? And will you help me write something to try and protect Tennessee people? So they said, yeah, we sure will. And that's what the bill did. It did two things. It said if you're going to have to sue or do litigation to try and get your assets back, you'll be able to do it in the state of Tennessee instead of having to go to New York or New Jersey or Rhode Island or someplace. And the second part of it says that instead of the big bank being the first one to get the money on a failure, we inverted that in the bill and said, no, the property owner is the first in line to get their money.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday, March the 12th, 2024. Welcome to the Civil Justice Subcommittee. Thank you for joining us. Item number 12, House Bill 2806 by Chairman Halsey. We got a motion? We got a motion and a second. Chairman Halsey.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for your indulgence and your patience with me. I appreciate it very much.
Mr. Grande, if you'll just identify yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Don Grande. I am a private practice attorney and been working on this issue for quite a while with regard to the Uniform Commercial Code and more specifically to this issue. In a nutshell, as Mr. Webb has talked about, with the 1994 Article 8 revision, they conjured a new type of property ownership or property right called a securities entitlement. The drafting committee defines a securities entitlement as a bundle of personal rights you hold against your broker. So if I hold rights against someone else, that's a contract. So it isn't a security in the sense that you thought you used to own something on paper. It's a contract, and any discussion to the contrary is false, and it's right there in the current UCC.
All securities are held in these massive pools, in pooled form at a higher level. They are not legally held at your broker, your custodian. People can be told that their securities are segregated at the broker level. It's just in the books and records of the broker. The subterfuge is that they are being used at a higher level in the system, where the secured creditors actually have ownership over the securities.
What are they doing with that? Are they making money off of that? That's what I want to know.
How are they making money out of this? Well, the derivatives complex, by a little after 2000, had reached $110 trillion. That was about twice the size of global GDP. By 2007, the financial crisis that was developing then, derivatives had reached 700 trillion. So it had gone from 100 to 700 trillion in 5 years. It's now estimated to be maybe 2 quadrillion, which is about 20 times the size of global GDP. Now, what made that possible was using these vast pools of the client assets as the collateral that is extended under these contracts. And so they're using someone else's collateral for their trades.
I didn't even know quadrillion was actually a real word. I thought it was something I made up when I was 7, but but apparently it is.
When did you first hear about the issue with your stocks ownership?
The first time I heard about it was in the subcommittee last week. It's not really that complicated. The problem is just that the information is not being disseminated to the people that are making the purchases. So, they're still utilizing your assets for collateral, whether it's yours in a pool without your name associated with it or yours with your name associated. And so either way, they're still utilizing your purchased property. But I'm glad that they're bringing this bill and hopefully we'll make sure that at least the citizens of Tennessee are the highest priority when it comes to, their assets being protected, and if anything happens, God forbid it does, that they'll get their assets back. The average consumer or the average citizen, not just in our state but across the country, is not educated in that regard. They think that they're doing something that's going to create legacy for their family, making purchases, thinking that they're going to grow, their assets, but in an instant, that whole portfolio that you purchased could be taken away from you, and you not even know why it was taken away from you.
What did you think of the hearing, or how that went?
Mr. Grandy and Mr. Webb did an excellent job. Of course, there were two bankers there to talk on the opposing side. Didn't like it. Said you don't need it. Everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And of course, everything isn't fine.
My name is Andy Guggenheim. I'm with the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. We are a national trade association representing broker-dealers, investment banks, and asset managers.
And I was pleased. There were some really good questions asked by committee members.
Where is it that the consumer gives consent? In the fine print that nobody ever reads? Is that where that happens at?
Yes, it would be in your securities account agreement when I've gotten some of these, and yes, they're about 20 pages long of a lot of fine print.
Mr. Guggenheim, let me give you an opportunity to respond to some of the points that Mr. Webb and Mr. Grandy made. You likely heard Mr. Webb tell us a little while ago that for 400 years, securities were personal property. You started off some of your testimony by saying that the property rights remain the same. So those two statements strike me as being inconsistent. Can you tell us whether you agree that those two statements are inconsistent, and if so, which one is the accurate one?
Whether we don't really see eye to eye on this point. This relates to the security interest for a margin loan, so I would look at this as the way you look at collateral for any other loan. This is when you use your securities as collateral. That's when your property rights change.
So are the brokers not using the purchased assets as collateral?
It would only apply in the case of a margin loan where the broker has that security interest and then can use that. That's what this provision was designed for in the UCC.
I'm just want to be clear, are they using the purchased assets as collateral, or are they not using it as collateral?
So if I had change in my pocket, I wouldn't know the exact quarters. I would know that I own this many quarters in my pocket, but kind of getting it down to that level of which security it is. You own securities, you own, the number that says on your brokerage statement, whether it's this security, but you still hold those same voting rights for your ownership stake in those securities, but securities, can be are more fungible in that respect.
So I think I'm a little clear now. So I think you are, and I don't want to speak for you, but I just want to regurgitate what I think I'm hearing. Yeah. So given the fact that these securities are in a pool, they are using the securities in the pool as collateral, but you don't know necessarily if they're using yours or somebody else's.
That's my understanding. Yes.
What's happened is Antonio Parkinson really took a leading role in questioning the people from the banking lobby, and he is in the Black Caucus will completely support this.
But so there is then a great possibility that they could be using your assets as collateral in whatever business they're doing. Nobody knows if it's yours or if it's someone else's, but somebody's is being used as collateral.
I guess I would go back to you have the ownership stake, on the basis of those securities, and that's kind of the plumbing of the financial system that kind of allows for the benefits of easy access to trading and having a kind of a very liquid market.
Okay, thank you.
That brought out, people are vulnerable and they can lose. And I had said during that committee meeting to somebody else, but I had said, I don't know one stockholder anywhere that I know that knows when they signed whatever paperwork they signed to purchase stock that those assets were going to be used for a loan someplace upline. Nobody knows that. This bill just does two things. If you're going to have to sue to get your money back, whether it's in a pool, a big pool, a small pool, or any pool, and they've used your money as collateral on a loan, and now the big bank wants to pull it in, this bill just says, instead of the bank being at the top of the priority list of getting your money, you go to the top of the list. The second thing it does is if you have to sue to get your money back, you're going to be able to do it in the state of Tennessee instead of the state of Rhode Island, New York. Now, that's about it. Now, at the end of the day, you got to decide how much risk Tennessee people are up against. And if passing this bill will help protect them, then I think that's what you ought to do. And I think you ought to wait till Gino Bolso gets back if he's going to vote for it. If he ain't going to vote for it, then just leave him out there. That's all.
Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Farmer? Yes. Farmer, yes. Grills?
Yes.
Grills, yes. Lamberth? Lamberth, no. Parkinson?
Yes.
Parkinson, yes. Todd? Aye. Todd, yes. Chairman Russell?
Aye.
Chairman Russell, aye. Chairman, you have 6 ayes and 1 no.
All right, the ayes prevail. House Bill 2806, civil full. And Mr. Sponsor, thank you for standing up for the little man.
This House subcommittee defied the banking lobby and voted to progress the bill 6-1. This is perhaps the first time in history that a legislature has pushed back against the banking lobby.
So David worked he ran a hedge fund for a number of years.
Okay.
And successful finance.
So you were responsible for
Well, I used to say to people, yes, I was a hedge fund manager, but not the evil kind.
Yeah. I heard about this issue actually with Representative Halsey. And candidly, when he told me about it, I said, that's insane. That's ridiculous. We all own our own property. I pulled out the book and read the section of code he was talking about and said, I'll be damned. I read that the same way he does. So there is a legitimate concern. As individuals, these are our securities. We're not pledging them for any institution. They're ours. They're in the form of investments. They're in the form of retirements. They're in the form of savings. They're what we're all working toward to have a better life, whether it's in retirement as we're living right now, but by God, it's ours.
Chairman Lundberg, we're looking at item number 26. This is Senate Bill 2640.
In 1994, the UCC, which is the Uniform Commercial Code, changed wording regarding securities, and this is a very important wording change. What it meant that the stocks and that you and I purchase can be used as collateral to guarantee loans for that investment firm. Taking that the next step, which would mean potentially if your investment firm went bankrupt, your assets could be pledged to that. This clarifies that.
Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Senator Hackberry? Votes aye. Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Nicely?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Reeves?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Sutherland?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Swan?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Watson?
Aye.
Votes aye. Senator Yeager?
Aye.
Votes aye. Chairman Bailey?
Aye.
Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Senate Bill 2640 moves committee on calendar.
This has been such a moving thing for me, really. What you've done, what the people did in the House here. In my experience here these few days, the main thing you have that I value is sane people.
Yeah, yeah.
There has been a subterfuge to do this, and massively, people are not aware of it, and people all the way to the top of the system are not aware of it. People who are responsible for the pension funds are not aware of this. I know because I've talked with them. I've been through this. They are.
Well, you don't believe it. It doesn't sound plausible.
It's hard to believe.
I didn't believe Halsey when he said, "Well, this is what it says." It's like that's not what it says.
Yes.
And by God, you read it. It's like it is what it says.
If it can be addressed in any one place, that is a very powerful thing. I think it's in a way a gift to us because it's so clear. They, as I say, they have damned themselves with their own documents. They're just plain as day.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's an issue that can unite all of us, all people, all the way to the top of the system. And that way, divide and rule does not work.
Yeah.
Well, I said in committee, I said most informed, thinking financial people can see this train going down the road, and they know down the track right down there is going to be a big colossal wreck. Everybody sees that, knows that. They just don't have anything in place to try and recover from it. And so actually we've been trying to run some bills here in this state that is an attempt to prepare people, or at least have an edge to keep them solvent and secure when that wreck happens. I think it's all orchestrated. I think it'll be on several fronts. I think it's financial. I think central bank digital currency be part of that. You control people's lives completely. When you do away with cash and you go to central bank digital currency, it's all programmable. So they can do just exactly like Communist China does, and they control what you buy, how far you go, whether your card will even work, 2 miles from your house. So we're going to lose this republic. To me, there's only two ways to salvage it. One, you need two things. One is a revival in the church where people get serious. And the second thing is state legislatures have to stand up when the federal government is unconstitutional in either law or rules or edicts. They're going to have to stand up and say to the federal government, no, we're not doing that here. And they're going to have to start nullifying unconstitutional actions by the federal government.
Yeah, it flew today. I was surprised. I was ready for a number of questions. I'm glad you were here, because if we get too far into the weeds, I'm going to have to. You were going to be my phone a friend.
I am totally available, really. And if you want me to come back, I will come back. Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, we can't do it on the floor, so you're going to have to let me.
Okay.
I'm swinging solo there.
Yes. Well, you were more than up to the task. Yeah. I could see that.
I appreciate you way more than you know.
Well, thank you. I owe you a book.
Well, I got one more hurdle to get over next week in that committee. I was worried that the banker boys would regroup and come back. Realizing this is their last shot.
For me, Bud is like a character from a classic Western film, the wise, brave, benevolent marshal.
We need to hold the federal government to exactly what the Constitution says. The Constitution says in Article 1, Section 8, that there's only 18 things that the federal government can even mess around in. They're very defined, only 18. When they operate outside of those 18 things, of course, they do so unconstitutionally, but we have allowed them to do that for the last 100 years, and now they have meddled and grown to the place where they're just not controllable at all. And they don't abide by the Constitution or the constitutional principles that go with it. So I think you could come to the place where states say, hey, everything that's not one of the enumerated powers that you have, we're going to exercise the 10th Amendment, and each state's going to do what he wants to, as far as what the people want in the state.
Do you think that our country is facing a threat of sovereignty from sort of global interests?
Indeed. I think that the globalists like Schwab and the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the UN, the international health rules, I think all that's orchestrated to take away your sovereignty. Those boys want to control the world. And who was it? Kissinger said a long time ago, if you want to control people, you control food. If you want to control nations, you control oil. If you want to control the world, you control money.
The thing about focusing on this property issue, the taking of all collateral, is it points directly at the real problem, which is the central bank control of all money creation, which is funding, directly or indirectly, all of these myriad threats against us.
So if what you're using as a monetary value is not your property, you have none. You have nothing. you are a slave.
They don't need your money. They can create unlimited money. It is about subjugation of people.
The average person is doomed. They have to wake up. They have to learn a little bit about what the real world is about. They have to stop buying into the myth.
There is orchestrated efforts to destabilize this country, to pit everybody against everybody, to do away with your history, to separate you from your past heritage. They've worked at that for 100 years and are quite successful at it right now because there's great divisions in this country.
We're in a hybrid war that is open-ended.
There is absolutely no reason that these changes cannot be made for the banking interest to say that there are big problems because people will actually have a claim to their own assets. That really tells you that there is a big issue that has to be faced up to here.
It's the truth, and the truth does not go away. So this is going to be here until we face up to it.
It's about a 24-hour-a-day job.
Yeah.
There's no business as usual stuff left.
Yeah.
It's all big things that deal with trying to maintain sovereignty and maintain liberty and obey the Constitution, and those are the big things, and you can't ignore them anymore. When I was a kid, I had a recurring dream about 4 times, I guess, that I woke up in the morning like any morning, and I walk into the kitchen. My mom's sitting at the kitchen table. She always sat there in her quiet time. She'd read some scripture and drink a cup of coffee, and I went over to say good morning, and she turned and looked at me, and they used to have these Halloween masks a long time ago that the mask was made up like somebody's face had caught on fire, and it was all scar tissue. It was just horrid. And she turned and looked at me, and that was the face that she had. And I was horrified. Ran out the back door trying to find my dad to say something's wrong with my mom. Running around the corner, my dad's coming around the corner the other way, and he's got the same mask on, same face. I yell and run up the street to the closest neighbors and knock on the door, and the neighbor comes to the door, and when he opens the door, he's got the same face. That dream came around to me that in this day and time now, when you look at decisions that are made by people that you either think you can trust or people in leadership positions, big leadership positions, and some of the things they say and some of the things that they do or some of the things that they do not do in the face of tyranny, it made me wonder, I wonder who's wearing the mask and I don't see it. I wonder who's in alliances with the approach for world government, for world domination, globalism. And that's scary. Troubles me.
Bill 2806 passed the House Subcommittee and the Senate Committee successfully. We came back for week 2 to make sure the bill would pass the full House Committee.
So we're in the Tennessee Capitol. We've kind of gotten some bad news this morning. It seems that the banking lobby is coming down pretty hard on preventing the hearing of this bill. We had passed the House Subcommittee. Frankly, the banking lobby didn't do a very good job in that hearing, but now they seem to have gotten to people at high levels here. There's a story being told that the issue at hand is margin accounts rather than what is actually in the code, which is the use of the collateral at higher levels in the system. And it's in black and white in the code that this is about the secured creditors of the intermediaries, not of the client. So it's not a margin account. It's very simple to see, but they're now getting to the representatives and telling them this, that this is disclosed in the contract that people sign with the broker, and that this is all normal, and that people have known this and understand it, which couldn't be further from the truth of the situation. We met with the House Majority Leader this morning, and that's where we got, this was the first meeting this morning, and we could see there that something had changed. We intend to meet with the Treasurer. It also seems that the Treasurer is part of the effort to quash this, but we'll see. We will be able to meet with him later today, and but it has turned into a heavy lift now. We're about to go into what promised to have been the final committee we were going to clear in order for this to go to the full Senate and House. And at the 12th hour here, it appears this will be stopped. The bill will not be allowed to progress. The mechanism for this is that the Treasurer of the state has said that he is uncomfortable moving this right now. He spoke with the representative of the House, or the Speaker for the House, and who has now spoken to the chairman of the committee. So they will move to send this to summer study, which will put it off for another year at least. So the question now is only whether Don and I will have an opportunity to say anything in the hearing.
I talked to the treasurer yesterday. I was with you last week, but I can't be with this week.
On which one?
What we're going to talk about. That bill.
Yeah. No, we understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just want you to know before you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
We're still hoping to be able to speak.
Me and Bud have gotten good at swimming the last couple of days because it seemed like the ship's going down.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you being up front with me.
We're going to go out of session and hear from Stephen Sepanik and Tim Amos. Mr. Sepanik?
My name is Stephen Sepanik. I'm an adjunct professor at Vanderbilt Law School and a resident of Nashville. I have been teaching and writing about the Uniform Commercial Code for more than 30 years, and I'm here today at the request of the Uniform Law Commission, but my comments are my own. This is a well-intentioned bill addressing a non-existent problem, and does so in a way that is likely to cause significant damage to commercial transactions and to Tennesseans. So, for example, DTC, which is the sort of centralized clearing agency, why would it want to do business with a intermediary in Tennessee that does business with Tennessee customers? Because now the whole structure of the system doesn't work right to protect DTC.
Do you remember toward the end of the testimony, the gentleman was saying that, well, you know, if you do this, no financial service firm will do business in the state. And in fact, they won't do business with any firm that would do business in the state. And finished it off by saying, this would be bad for the DTCC. Do you think anyone really focused on what was being said there?
I want to assume that other members on that committee were as incensed to being threatened by this pinhead as I was.
That was good exposition then, that you think people understand that they were being threatened.
Yeah. I think everybody in the room understood that. What amazes me is the arrogance that went with it.
Yes.
Because they believe they are untouchable.
Yes.
And they believe they're invincible, and they pretty much are if you look at their past history.
Yes.
You know, they pretty much are. And so I think it's over crassness, but it's bathed in arrogance, and they're used to it.
I've listened to testimony. I've looked into this issue at length over the last few weeks, and I guess I'm a little more intrigued than probably y'all would like us to be. there's lots of property interests that we secure in this state by state law. I mean, the same arguments that you are making on this have been made over and over again on why we can't, in from a 10th Amendment standpoint, a states' rights standpoint, operate within a nation that has obviously kind of some overarching commerce rules that operate state to state, but at the same time provide a little more protection, a little more property rights protection, quite frankly, for citizens in Tennessee. So I'm not saying that I'm entirely there to the chairman's bill, but I think he's onto something a little bit more. And quite frankly, the pushback I've gotten from this leads me to believe that there may be a little something here that we could improve upon.
I was very involved in the amendments to Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code in the 1990s. That drafting committee operated for 7 years. They try to decide things by consensus. They try never to have votes of the committee because that's usually a bad sign. And so they spend years developing something with the best minds in the world, not just the country, in the world, to make sure that it works. This law went through that process. It's been in effect for 30 years. If you want to change it, I would invite you to work with the Uniform Law Commission and benefit from their experience.
In this particular state, at this particular time, I think you are looking at that study committee. I trust the members that were elected by their folks back home to come here and make these type of decisions. So I appreciate that offer of assistance, but these are the folks that I would recommend that y'all work with, because we have to vote and form the laws of this state as the voice of our district. So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that with us, but it would be best to probably try to work with these folks here. That'd just be my suggestion.
In the hearing in Tennessee, when the Uniform Law Commission people were testifying against it, some members of that full committee said, stop, you don't tell us how to pass laws, we pass the laws, we determine the laws of Tennessee. So there is a time they are starting to stand up and say, time out, we write the laws. And the Uniform Law Commission, I think, had made the mistake of trying to say, we are going to write these laws, you guys are just going to implement them.
And by doing what you're doing, they are demonstrating that they are corrupt.
That's correct.
In their own testimony. Do you think that people are seeing and understanding that?
I think so. And in the committee there in Tennessee, they really did. They're shooting these people over to rabbit holes instead of allowing them to stay focused. Like Representative said, it's two simple things.
Yes.
And they want to distract over into different terms, different areas.
I think this legislation is aimed at a non-problem. The securities intermediary is prohibited from doing what they're alleged to be doing, and prohibited by the UCC. It would be a criminal act under federal law. There is no evidence that this is happening. I mean, Lehman Brothers failed. No customer lost money because of the rules that you're considering amending.
In the case of Lehman Brothers, Lehman was using the client collateral under swap contracts, and JP Morgan, which was also the custodian for their assets, was on the other side of those swap contracts and took the property in the insolvency of Lehman Brothers. Unbeknownst to these sophisticated clients, their treasuries were being used by Lehman under swap contracts with JP Morgan. This decision of the bankruptcy court is 5 years after the collapse of Lehman Brothers. They still have not recovered their collateral after that length of time.
And the final question, Professor, is this. Obviously, the second part of the bill deals with the priority of security interests. But is it accurate to say that one does not get involved in determining priority of security interests unless first you have competing security interests?
That is correct.
And if a securities intermediary were prohibited from creating a security interest in a financial asset, then there would be no security interest about which a question about priority would raise.
If the securities intermediary is prevented from granting it, yes. If it's merely prohibited but nevertheless possible, you could potentially get the priority dispute. So I would love to be able to answer your question and say it can't happen, but I think it probably could happen, but it would take an awful lot. I mean, it would take a violation of the UCC, a violation of criminal law, would have to get past the auditors.
I'm trying to figure out how we got to such contrasting interpretations of what's happening here. I mean, you gave us information that completely opposite ends of the spectrum of the information that we received last week. Well, based on last week, the consumer is not protected.
Right.
But based on your testimony today, the consumer is and has been protected. How do we have such a large gap in where we are on this?
I'm assuming the proponents of this legislation are well-intentioned. I'm assuming they really believe what they have to say. Sometimes convincing someone that they're mistaken is very difficult. People hold on to their beliefs. I would love to be able to sit down with the proponents and try to convince them that they are mistaken.
They're here, so, if you want to speak to them, I'm sure, they'd be open to it. But, Mr. Chair, I want to know, are the guests that we had on that spoke last week, are they on the list today?
They are on the list today.
Can we stay out of session for a few more minutes to hear from them? Because I do want to understand why we got two totally different ideas of what this bill is doing.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to make a motion for us to come back into session. I too have heard from both sides, but I'm not going to make a motion at this time. I mean, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you and the committee. I mean, Representative Parkinson has put it out there for the other side to come up and speak. We've heard quite a bit on this, but until that offer was tendered, I was going to make a motion for us to go back into session and actually debate and or vote on the bill, but I will not do so at this juncture.
To expose what is happening here, there's a Bank for International Settlements document titled Developments in Collateral Management Services. This is from 2014. It explains so this has been going on for more than a decade in a big way, and what you see is the flow of collateral in this chart. You see it flows from collateral givers to collateral takers. The collateral givers are equity desks, custodians. This is done on a global basis, and there is an automated collateral management system that operates particularly in a crisis atmosphere when the value of the collateral is falling to sweep more collateral to the collateral takers. Now, who are the collateral takers? These are the central clearing counterparties where the derivatives complex is cleared. The issues here have been conflated.
Thank you, sir. If you could that's 3 minutes right there, and I appreciate that presentation. Next on the list, I have Leader Lambert. You're recognized.
Thank you very much, sir. We just make sure, give you a chance to give a rebuttal there, but with that, I make a motion that we go back into session.
Thank you, Minister. Any objections? Seeing none. We're back into session.
I move that we send HB 2806 to summer study, given the complexity of the issues.
Okay. That's proper motion, proper second. Members, all those in favor of sending House Bill 2806 as amended to summer study, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it.
You got cramped on.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know what to say about it. I think
that was very one-sided.
I think Bolso messed it up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It is what it is. We appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
I hate to ask you
We'll be back.
to come back.
We'll be back.
All that flapping you just heard.
It's crazy. Margin accounts, my God. We appreciate you.
This now has national significance because it is clearly a nonpartisan issue.
Right.
We can all unite behind this. And this is what I mean by punching a hole. We can punch a hole with this thing.
Yeah.
I think what we've done here is very positive in terms of getting the exposition of the reality of this, and it will position Tennessee to be able to react to the crisis when it is unfolding, and to be able to act with some urgency. The representatives here will, and the Senate will know what could be done to protect the state, and it could be done in an emergency session. It appears that a crisis will have to become more full-blown before there will be action.
I think that Well, I know the treasurer's worried about making sure he knows all the details on what we're doing. And he has concerns about it. He is reading David's book. And he had asked the speaker to send this to a summer study. And so that's what happened.
How do you feel about that? Or?
Well, I wanted to run the bill, and I wish they had done that. Of course, I wouldn't want to lose the bill either, but a summer study can be a good thing if we really sit down and look into it in detail and really zero in on what the facts are. If we can do that, then it will accomplish something that's good. But my concern about it too is if you have something major go wrong in the next 12 months before we can get back in session, we're all vulnerable. I'm going to try and secure the treasurer's word that if we start to see the beginnings of a major collapse out here where we're vulnerable and in jeopardy, that we can call a special session to try and lay these planks in place to protect Tennessee people.
Well, where do we go from here then?
Well, knocked down but not knocked out, so
yeah.
We'll keep pursuing it. We got to win at some point. We'll see.
This film documented the first legislative season where bills were introduced to restore property rights to securities. Having these bills heard in state committees served to expose the issue and force the banking lobby to show their hand. The fight continues until the truth prevails and our rights to securities are restored.
There is absolutely no reason that these changes cannot be made for the banking interest to say that there are big problems because people will actually have a claim to their own assets. That really tells you that there is a big issue that has to be faced up to here.
You can protect yourself from risk of loss by obtaining physical share certificates of your securities. When stocks and bonds are taken out of dematerialized form into paper certificate form, full property rights to those securities are intact. But let's be clear, the vast majority of the stock market is held in funds that do not offer paper certificates. This means that your retirement fund, your pension fund, mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks are all at risk of loss in the event of the next big collapse.
Almost everybody's 401k, everybody's retirement is wrapped up in stocks somewhere.
Yeah.
So is mine. So everybody's at risk.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of hole we are drilling.
One of the things that is important to me is retirees, that their retirement is protected. Does a Oklahoma citizen have the ability to request now ownership of the stocks in the underlying fund?
Representative, the individual would not have the ability to request to pierce through and get ownership of the individual actual securities, the Apple computer shares or whatever.
There's no way to get share certificates into a retirement account. Your IRA, your 401k, you can't get share certificates. If you own a mutual fund, there are not certificates for that.
Pensions and government funds could end up getting caught in this crisis as well. Now is the time to stop it.
We must all call our state representatives and demand they restore property rights to financial securities by amending Article 8 of the UCC.
I think we're under some kind of mass hypnosis that we're powerless against this, and we have to break that spell. And the way to do that is to realize that we can take action and to really take it.
People often say, well,
They don't have the right to do that. It's right in the Constitution. I have a right to free speech. I have a right to bear arms. I have a right to peaceful assembly. And I came to the conclusion a long time ago is that we have to recapture our power to do things, our power to have our rights, the same way we lost it. Our first step is to become influential in the political units at the local level. We have a slogan at the Red Pill University, which is, why fight City Hall when you can be City Hall?
There are folks in your state legislature who are solid, good, patriot people who want to preserve liberty and sovereignty for your state. You need to get to know those folks. And you need to talk to them and build a relationship with them, and you need to go with them and say, hey, how can we get a bill? And that's exactly what we did with these folks, is they wrote a bill. Don wrote a bill.
Festus Hagen said one time, the only way the water's going to clear up is when you get the pigs out of the creek. and I try to tell people it's your job to get your legislator fired up.
That's right.
To get the pigs out of the creek. And that's our job.
When people learn about this scheme, part of the mind says, well, maybe this isn't real. By these people bringing these bills, people actually had to look at the UCC and see that this is absolutely real. The banking lobby came down in full force. They could not refute this at all. The only way they could counter it was by lying and through subversion of the legislative process and by threats. The banking lobby does not want to give up this unrestricted use of this collateral free of payment. So they will threaten the state with withdrawal of financial services.
What consequences is that for our investors? What happens to our people if we do this?
Make no mistake about it, you will be threatened by the banking interests. This is a pattern of criminal behavior, quite frankly. Just threatening the state will ultimately be a criminal act if there is a taking of property. Those individuals that are threatening the state, if there is harm and that threat has been made, those people individually can be charged, criminally charged, criminal penalties, 20 years in prison under RICO. And you just have to explain to those people, think hard about what you're doing. You are threatening a sovereign state and the people of this state.
The institutions that are taking advantage of this, basically, this structure allows them to, whether you consider it criminal or not, engage in riskier behavior, right? So if you unwind this, they would engage in less risky behavior, but what you're doing is protecting the individual's property right at the top of this chain of events that could happen if a bad thing happens.
It can be done simply. I'm not saying it's not going to be opposed, because they have free use of all this collateral. They are not going to willingly give that up. They have no reason to cooperate with this. So it is up to people in the states to decide what they're going to do about this. There's not going to be help from the federal level. The answer isn't going to come from there. It is not going to happen in Europe at the EU level. Absolutely not. The individual states in Europe will not stand up against this. The only place it's going to happen, and I've seen it in coming here with these processes, it is possible in the states.
But these constituents in my district said, you got to do something about this.
Well, that's hugely significant that the people in the state made this happen, essentially.
That's who got me involved in it.
Yeah.
And of course, I learned real quick that the average banker's quite ignorant. Mm-hmm. They don't know anything about it.
Yes.
The big dogs that run this show know all about it and are willing to lie every day, all day about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's exactly what we ran up against in South Dakota, is the banking lobby. They're the ones who are basically stopping the legislature from getting through. The bankers themselves and the people of South Dakota want to see this legislation pass, but it is definitely the bank lobby that we are fighting, and the UCC, the Uniform Commission attorneys, and they will basically, be fraudulent in testimony. They will not tell the truth, even in committee, and so obviously they've gotten away with it before.
My daddy, I lost him 3 years ago. He was 96 years and 7 months. And he told me a long time ago, he said he was going through this old graveyard and he came across a headstone that had these words. It said, "A politician and a good man." And my dad said that he thought it was quite odd that they would have buried two people in the same day. I don't want to be a politician at all. I want to be a statesman with one foot firmly planted in the Holy Scriptures and the other foot firmly planted in the Constitution. That's what I want. That's what this lady wants.
So the important thing in listening to Representative Halsey and Representative Auk is they're actually doing something in their states, and we know who we're up against. We've got their attention of the bank lobby, of the financial interests, and as Representative Halsey said, we've gotten their attention because now they're sending out better liars, more higher level liars, because they can't refute what David has laid out. And they can't refute the simple changes we're proposing in this bill.
We'd been a year prior to running this. We all of a sudden had this call from the Lieutenant Governor of South Dakota and from Representative Auk. Hey, there is this big UCC bill and it's not good, and what are we going to do? And by the time we can get this connected, it's already passed both chambers and it's on the desk of the governor.
I won't say Betty is the better half, but because I don't want to pick sides there. It is one hell of a team. And I can say that none of this would have happened without Don and Betty. Betty is a former state legislator in North Dakota and has a tremendous depth of experience with that, and I've seen it in terms of being able to guide people through the legislative process.
I work on public policy for a number of organizations, but my main focus is the Pro-Family Legislative Network. Well, what does that have to do with Article 8? The finances for your family are affected in this. It makes it a pro-family issue.
How easy or difficult is it for the average person to get a meeting with a representative?
It depends on the state, the population of the state, what kind of staff they have. Mm-hmm. So in my state, I had no staff. So they called me at home, they showed up at my home, they showed up at my desk. We're citizen legislators. We pass laws and we go home and live everything as citizens, just like our constituency. Remember when you get a hold of your legislators. You don't have to be angry at them. It's not their fault. Be polite, give them information, and they want to work with you. Mm-hmm. Coming in, and I've had this happen to me, the screaming and yelling, and you can't even get to the issue. Settle down, take a deep breath, and bring the information forward. They want to work with you. They really do. You have to dedicate yourself. You have to become that citizen who's going to stand up and not just sit back and learn about things and not take action. And that action is at your local level. As was stated, we know right now, it doesn't matter who wins the presidency, but the federal legislators can do nothing about this issue.
We live in a time now where efforts to take away personal and state sovereignty is coming from 360 degrees, so you find yourself, it's not just this issue.
A lot of issues.
You find yourself with 25 other issues of trying to lay planks to keep your state sovereign when the rest of the country is going to fall off a cliff. Every person that's listening and looking and awake and aware and vigilant, you've got 250 to 500 that are asleep.
That's right.
So these people that are listening are already awake and want to do something about this. I wish we could find a way, particularly with this issue, because everybody owns stock. Nobody wants to be vulnerable, to be able to get the message that you have to the sleepy people, because they'll wake up over this.
Oh, yes, yes.
Why should they even care if we write a bill that says if there is a crash and you do steal people's property, then the people you stole it from are going to be first in line to get their money back, not the big banks. Yeah. If they're not loaning money and it's not built on collateral from stock, then why in the world would you care?
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Now, you have to understand this is being done on an enormous scale. The collateral is being used many times over. It begins by some jurisdiction somewhere in the world reversing this. It was implemented in local law. It can be easily and elegantly reversed in local law.
So the takeaway is that it's doable. I think that's what David wants to get across here. The truth is on our side. We've got good people on our side. We're motivated by the right things. The other side is motivated by greed.
Get out and vote, and make sure that you're voting, make sure you know who you're voting for, and make sure you're voting for true patriots that are going to fight for you.
We're already seeing these things moving very rapidly and exposing the situation in a way that never would have been possible without taking these actions. You know, wouldn't have happened just through reading about it or talking about it. You have to do things. So the actions force the exposition. And now I would say it is unstoppable. Because it is exposed. It's the truth. South Dakota and Tennessee, those bills are coming back. In addition to those states will be North Dakota, Iowa, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Utah, Texas, Arkansas, Montana, Louisiana, Wyoming, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and possibly Florida. Our wildest dreams are happening.
The truth shall set us free. I'd like to thank David Webb for getting the ball rolling on this issue. But now it's all up to us. We must face the problem head on. Just like in our personal lives, if we don't face our issues, they will only fester and grow. We must face down the banking lobby and assert our property rights to our own financial assets. We need to be clear about this. A malicious group of predatory banking interests has set up a legal scheme to seize everyone's life savings. We cannot allow this to happen. No one, no matter what political disposition, wants this to happen. Change will only occur through focused action and persistent and sustained pressure on our state legislatures to amend the UCC. Call your state legislator and tell them to restore property rights to financial securities by amending Article 8 of the Uniform Commercial Code. We have a legal team in place at truenorthpublicpolicy.com, that's TRU. They will write bills and help advise your state legislator through the process. Don and Betty Grande are available to interface with you and your legislator, and they can use your support.
Put them in touch with Don and Betty Grande. And you are then a superstar immediately because you have a professional, effective legal team working with you immediately.
Please donate at truenorthpublicpolicy.com. That's TRU, northpublicpolicy.com. To learn more about this issue in depth, subscribe to The Great Taking Report at thegreattakingreport.com. I review the primary source documents so that you can understand and communicate this issue to others.